What up players, it's Warboss Tay up in this mode. Today we're going to be painting this Space Wolves Long Fang. So the colors you're going to need are the Fang. Oh, I think I go over some of these too at the beginning. Rust Gray, Agrax Earthshade, Rakelin Fleshshade, Known Oil, Rakarth Flesh, Chaos Black, Steel Legion Drab, Lead Belcher, and Balthazar Gold, and finally, no, not that one, where is it? Mechanicus Standard Gray, which I can't seem to find around me right now. It's a dark gray color, so any dark gray color will, here it is, will do if you don't have this one. But this is how far we get today, base coats and washes. Okay, what's up everybody, it's Warboss Tay, and I am going to be painting up this Long Fang. So what is a Long Fang and why am I painting him up? Space Wolves have this special unit of long-range heavy artillery guys, and in other Space Marine armies they would be like the Devastators. They have the big weapons like the missile launchers, the heavy bolters, plasma cannons, las cannons, all that stuff. But with the Space Wolves, you're able to take, like in a unit of 5, you're able to take 4 missile launchers, and with with the versatility of the missile launcher as a weapon in 6th edition and 40k as a game, most army lists out there have a Long Fang squad or 2, which is why I decided to do it for a tutorial. So the colors you're gonna need are, I'll take them in order, the Fang, Rust Gray, Fenrisian Gray. I'm noticing a pattern here. All these colors seem to be has something to do with the Space Wolves. And you also need Agrax Earthshade. Where is my Agrax Earthshade? I wonder if I didn't grab it when I got to the painting table. Anyways, alright, never mind, forget it. We'll find it later. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the Fang and we're going to paint up the entire model of, all of the power armor stuff with it. So the Space Wolves are such an iconic army of the Games Workshop 40,000 fiction. They are the Norse Viking styled warriors, and they have a lot of that in their history and their fluff. Oh, by the way, when I was kit bashing this guy together, you might or might not have noticed, but he has different parts from different kits. For the legs, I used the Space Wolves pack. For the torso, I used a regular old Tactical Space Marine torso. And for the arms and missile launcher, it's from the regular Tactical Space Marine kit for the missile launcher. The head is a Long Fang head, which you can get off of the Space Wolves pack kit. And I think the backpack is a Space Wolves backpack, yes. And before you put any paint on your model, you should always primer your model first. A lot of people use spray primer, myself included. But some people also have to hand prime their models, especially now with winter being in, full swing. Somebody wrote on one of my recent videos, I haven't had a chance to respond yet, but they asked what some good hand primers might be, because in winter going outside to spray prime your models is not an option in lots of places. So personally, for my spray primer, I use Duplicolor, which is, I think, a primer that's meant for most metals, plastics. It's pretty cheap and it's very good. I like that it's dark gray, so I can see where all the details and stuff are. It's not glaringly bright like white primer, and it doesn't obscure the detail or hide things as much as black primer does. If you want a hand primer, if you want to paint your primer on, then I've heard that Vallejo makes a great paint-on primer. You can try one of those. I actually don't know what color the things like the missiles and the actual missile launcher weapon itself are supposed to be. So I'm gonna have to look that up right now. So the colors I gave you were just really for the power armor, so I might jump onto other things while the power armor is drying. Yeah, let's take a look at some examples here. Looking at I've got some white dwarves next to me, like I'm gonna be looking for some examples, and I always take my inspiration from my painting from White Dwarf and Games Workshop, and also from Cool Mini or Not has lots of really great articles and types of, you know, showcases and galleries for their models. Yeah, this one doesn't have any. Oh, here we go. Here's another. Like, Space Wolves were such a like big part of the Army's releases last year, or Games Workshop's releases last year. Oh, and what do you know? There's a model down here on page 54 of this White Dwarf that has an actual Long Fang model. So this would be great to get some inspiration from. So as you can see, the majority of the missile launcher is metal, so we're going to take and use lead belcher. Here we go, lead belcher the paint. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cover the entire missile launcher with this, because the parts that are in dark black metal, we can just pick those out. So when doing base coats, I've learned that it's just more convenient with your time to just paint over the entire thing that's going to be painted in the majority color, and then you just take your time after to work the details. Yeah, so the new Dark Angels were released today, and I was able to swing by, pick up some stuff, so I might do some videos on those later. I'm really trying to finish my tour around the tour of the first Founding Legions and get all these color scheme videos out for them in their current iteration before I get to any of that new stuff. And man, when you look at your subscription feed, I bet you that there are at least like 3 or 4 of the channels that you subscribe to. I know there were for me. I think there were like at least 4 channels that have like unboxings of Dark Angel stuff and product reviews, codex reviews, in-depth stuff like that. And for me, I can't do that. I don't like to be right there with all of that. I like to wait a little while. I don't like going with the flow, I guess you could say. Okay, not sure about these missiles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint them the way I think they're supposed to be painted, with lead belcher. So I'm going to do like a majority of metal, and we'll do some black detailing just like with the missile launcher itself. Yeah, these pieces, you can find them on the Tactical Space Marine kit. The same with the missile launcher arms. when you look in the Devastator's kit, they actually have a backpack, and most of you who play Space Marines know this, but the Devastator kit actually has a backpack that has like an auto loader for the missiles, takes them off of the backpack and puts them in, and I think that's so awesome. Just personally, I know that I, for one, like to try to kit bash and build together and use all the pieces that I can from my kits. So it's hard for me to go out and spend money on a Devastator box because unfortunately the Devastator boxes have only so much of one weapon type. You know, they don't have, you don't get 4 missile launchers in one box, or 4 autocannons or 4 las cannons, unfortunately. Okay, now we're gonna take some Chaos Black, Abaddon Black, any kind of black you want. We're gonna paint in the joins of all the armor. So, back down here. And the great thing about Space Wolves and any Games Workshop Space Marine army is you don't need to have actual Space Wolves components on your models and call it, in order to call it that. If you're doing like if you have like a Devastator box set, you can just build a bunch of Devastators, paint them in Space Wolves colors, and call them Space Wolves. Like, there's no rule that says you need these models unless you're doing units that are specific to a certain type of armies. Like Death Guard, for example, it would be frowned upon if you use non-Death Guard models. Like if you use regular Space Marine models and use those to symbolize or count them as Blood Angels Death Guard or Death Company. Or for example, like Sanguinary Guard are such individual looking models, it would be hard to justify doing them with other kits just in order to save money. Just because the look is so iconic, I guess. Alright, so the joints are between the gloves, on the hands, like in the wrists, the elbows, usually wherever there's a joint. Or a joint, I mean. Did someone say joint, man? No, Warthag. Not that kind of joint. Lord of mercy. We're also going to take our black paint and we're going to paint up the casing, I guess you could call it, of the missile launcher. So this black area on the top here. Here, this handle. You want to make sure that when you're painting all these, you go on with the paint pretty thinly and don't get them on too thickly by, you can use like a wet palette, or you can use different painting techniques to thin the paint down, maybe using a slow dry, like a paint medium for acrylic drying, and like a paint retarder, flow aid. There's a bunch of different things offered by companies like Vallejo that are products that have nothing to do with that, I mean, that aren't actually paints, but you know, you can use them to supplement and help the quality of your actual painting. Some of you might have seen my how to paint a Thunderwolf video, Thunderwolf Cav in a dark brown color scheme. I'll be doing that, finishing that up hopefully later this weekend. I've been working on a big project and it just wrapped up, so I actually have some time now to get back into more modeling stuff for a little while at least. There we go. Okay, and the last thing is this little cap on the back. Yeah, sorry, I hate how my camera goes out of focus. Try to hold it for a certain angle for too long and it just kind of goes out of focus. It's kind of sucks. It's not good. Alright, let's do something fun. I'm gonna take some Rakarth flesh now. I'm gonna paint this guy's skin. So why Rakarth flesh, which is used as more of a bone color for things that are like fangs and claws and bones like skeletons? Why are we using that for skin? Because the space wolves are usually painted or described as, you know, coming from Fenris, which is a snow world. They are painted in usually cool colors, blues, and like this light blue space wolf color. And like if you use basing materials like snow, like you flock their bases with snow and stuff, then just you imagine them as like these pale skinned people. Their skin is naturally more pale, and if you use something like Bugman's Glow or Cadian Flesh Tone, stuff like that, then the skin will end up turning out a lot pinker, more reddish, and won't be as, I guess, awesome looking. Now if you're using a helmet, then you don't even have to worry about this part. If you're using a helmet for your Long Fang, if you use a regular Devastator squad, or if you're just using a helmeted Space Wolf, then yeah, don't worry about this. This is just in case you do not. Alright. Kablooey! Next we're gonna take Steel Legion Drab, and I'm going to use Steel Legion Drab to paint up any wolf tails on this guy's armor. One thing that I've seen other painters, other Space Wolf painters do, which I think is really cool and I'm going to copy, is that if any of them have these wolf tails, like lucky wolf tails hanging down as charms and good luck charms hanging from their armor and stuff, then you paint them up darker the younger the Space Wolf is. So this guy's an old wolf, so he'll get a wolf tail that is kind of turning gray, white, and the sorry about that. All I was saying was that the older the Space Wolf gets, the more gray the wolf tail will turn. Alright, now we're going to paint on the silver metallics, or the gold metallics rather, with Balthazar Gold as our base color. If your Space Wolf has these wolf tail charms, then that is the first thing that we will hit. There's a great piece of fluff in the fiction that Karn, the Betrayer, back when he was still fighting under the flag of the Emperor, he wrote a treatise on the different Space Marine legions, and when he was talking about the Space Wolves, he talks about how they've just turned really obedient and subservient to the Emperor, and that like he is able to use them as a tool, but they are not like he makes fun of how they're called the wolves, but they're not really wolves, they're more like pups. And I think that's really cool. The Emperor tells them to heal, and they will heal. This is coming from Karn, who is a legionary in the infamously evil World Eaters Legion. The cool thing about the Space Marine or the Space Wolf fluff is that they are, you know, they're brutal and savage and one almost barbaric in terms of how they, you know, how they treat other Space Marines and how they live and stuff like that. But they have their own code of honor, you know, and they have their own way of doing things, and of, you know, their legion or their chapter now has a very individual style and character, and that's why a lot of people like to play the Space Wolves. They're so different from something like the Ultramarines or even one of the lesser known chapters that kind of adhere to a very, you know, a certain way of doing things, like the Raven Guard or the Iron Hands, who, even though they have their own style, they might not be as I guess individualistic as the Space Wolves are. Let's look for anything else we can paint. Let's do the border here of this guy's legs. So gold is used as an accent color, and when you paint it on the trim around, it's really effective. So if you're using Space Wolf legs or pieces of Space Wolf armor from the kit that have very Fenrisian Space Wolfy kind of style to it, then a lot of it will have things like these, this trimming on the armor pieces, which you can use. I'm also going to use gold paint on this strap around this brother's leg, this brother Marine. And finally we'll do his little belt buckle here. Okay, I think by now the paint on the other areas have kind of dried out, so we can get on to an armor highlight. For the armor highlight, we're going to use Rust Gray. So Rust Gray is more of a grayish than a blue tone, but it's lighter than the Fang. So just want to make sure that you don't add too much where you don't want it to be. Oh, and I need to paint the trim there. In the 41st millennium, the present of where this Warhammer 40,000 game takes place, the Space Wolves use or paint their armor this very light gray blue color. In the old days, pre-heresy as it was called, the Space Wolves uniform was actually dark gray, and at some point they went away from that to this more like baby bluish kind of color scheme. A lot of people don't care for it, and I must say it's really, unless you actually paint it, if you just saw it on the battlefield, chances are you probably would think, yeah, that looks kind of dumb for a color scheme. But when you actually paint it, like I painted my Rune Priest, which many of you have seen, I used it as the basis for my How to Paint Gingerbeards tutorial, when you actually paint it and you can put it down and look at it, it's actually not that bad. I actually don't think it's that bad at all. But I know I, for one, when you see it in the magazine, I look at it and I think like, ugh, it's an ugly color. Before we move on, just to give this some more color, I'm going to paint some Mournfang brown to this guy's hair. Oh wait, I'm not. He's a Longfang. He's an old man. Oops. Forget I said that. I'm going to color his hair. Mechanicus Standard Gray. I almost made a terrible mistake. Yeah, so the older Space Wolf gets, let's talk about that a little bit. The older Space Wolf gets, the more veteran he becomes, the more battles he takes place in, the more he learns, the more he grows, the more he's able to temper his savage, animalistic tendencies and be a little bit more tactical. So in saying that, the youngest Space Wolves have like the, you know, the red-orange kind of ginger hair, and they are usually the ones first in the fight, like the assault squads. They are called Blood Claws. And then as they get older, they become Gray Hunters, become more able to, like I said, calmly assess and approach a tactical situation. And when they are old enough and experienced enough and they've been through enough battles, then they do what this guy does. They put down their bolter and their chain fist, or chain sword, and they pick up a rocket launcher and they say, all these years I've been trying to run forward and get myself killed when I could have been standing at the back of the lines, nice and safe, with my good buddy dismissal launcher here, and not be in any danger. I'm an old man. I'm an old wolf. So this color scheme is going to be the same for any Space Wolf in my army, at least. So I'm going to use this color scheme for the Thunderwolf rider, which you might or might not have seen. Same thing. So you see how the rust gray really lightens up the base color. And just make sure you keep painting over the same area, and it's called brush control, where you're able to take the paint and just kind of feather out the edges and blend it into the colors around it. In fact, I think I made a mistake. I think I might have called the Space Wolves the 5th Legion at the beginning of this video. They're actually the 6th Legion. White Scars was the 5th. Sometimes I have to go back in my head and count them all again. Like, wait a minute. 1st Legion is Dark Angels. 2nd Legion is been wiped from the records. 3rd Legion is Emperor's Children. 4th Legion is Iron Hands. 5th Legion is Iron Scars. Okay, 6th Legion is Space Wolves. And I am surprised I know all that and still have a girlfriend. I love taking her to what we call the nerd store. she's, you know, she's so, I don't know what you want to call her, but I think she's so awesome and cool, and like you bring her to like the, you know, the fortresses of solitude, the comic stores and the game stores and stuff, and like it's like the whole atmosphere inside changes. All the guys inside are like, wait, what's going on? What's a girl doing here? Okay, I'll do a little bit more with this guy, but I think I'm gonna cut it soon. We'll do the wash, and then we'll cut this video. The coolest part is seeing after you paint the, you know, rust gray on, you put on the Agrax Earthshade wash, and all of a sudden the model just takes on new life, gets new character. It just looks like so much more awesome, and we'll take it all the way there. Who would want to play the Space Wolves army? I always think about that when I'm doing these Legion videos. Like, what draws someone to the character besides wanting to win? Space Wolves are a very competitive army because of their long fangs. These guys who are able to take 4 missile launchers in a 5-man squad, and there's just so many tactical ways of using a Space Wolves army. But spirit-wise, like, they're all like these space Vikings, you know, and they fly around the universe and they drink ale, get into fights, smash things up. Like, who wouldn't want to be a part of that? They're definitely the most, I think, the most unconventional of the chapters. Most of the other chapters, even if they don't have a strict codex adherent army or force or way of documenting and recording all their stuff, like most of the other chapters in the Space Marines and the Legions Astartes, they at least kind of follow some kind of uniform like way of, like, in meaning their appearance, the way they do things. Like, you know, you see a fully armored helmeted warrior coming out of a drop pod with his bolter firing, then it's like, oh, it's Space Marines, they've come to save the planet. But then when a Space Wolf drop pod smashes into the ground and pops open, and you hear like rock and roll music inside, and these big guys with no helmets and long scraggly beards and hair come running out screaming at the top of their lungs and stuff, it's like, oh, it's those guys. I think it's great. I really think it's great. As a player who appreciates the fluff of a game just as much as the tactics and the models and all that stuff, I think the Space Wolves are a fun army. Okay, so you don't want to worry too much about getting this color on, this rust gray. You just want it to be smooth. It's got to be smooth, because when the wash goes on, you don't want it to show up as the paint job before being really clumpy, if that makes any sense. So you just want to make sure there's no streaks, there's no clumps, the paint doesn't dry in weird, awkward areas. And you can do that, like I said earlier, by purchasing yourself some... Oh man, it's so blurry. Purchasing yourself some Flow Aid, I guess it's called, paint retarder, which kind of slows down the time it takes for the paint to dry, or by just using a wet palette. I'm kind of rushing through this, so I'm not really utilizing my wet palette as much as I should be, but wet palette is always the easiest and the cheapest situation, or cheapest way to keep your paint nice and ready to use. Right, there he's done with the backpack. I'm gonna fix a couple mistakes I made, and then we are going to do the washes. First is lead belcher on these vents on the back. Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, just as a challenge to myself, I'm gonna try painting a Space Marine from every single one of the original founding legions. That's what this whole thing is about for me. And if they've gone rogue, renegade, become evil traitorous Space Marines, then I'm still gonna paint them up in their current color scheme. And to me, that is gonna be pretty awesome, because half of them did turn evil. Alright. So, here's our Space Marine at this point. We're going to add the washes. We're going to start with Rakeland Flesh Shade for his face. Let's see if I can find my washes. Alright, Rakeland Flesh Shade for the face. I'm just trying to get it everywhere first, and then I'm going to kind of pull it away. The thing about shades is once you get it onto the main surface area, you kind of want to take the tip of your brush and move it around so that it kind of does what you want it to do, goes where you want it to go. Take some Nuln Oil, paint that onto this guy's hair. As well as his mustache and beard if he has one, if your guy has a beard. And the missile launcher, as well as any silver metallics. For example, for myself, these missiles over here at his waist. Now you might be painting a Space Marine like a Bloodclaw Space Wolf, or a Grey Hunter that's armed with a bolter, and that's totally fine. The techniques and the colors are all the same. If anything, you're going to be changing just a little bit because of the different weapons that they're using where you're painting what. So a bolter, you would be using the same colors here as you would be for the missile launcher: silver for the main metallic parts and black for the casing. Just like that. And there we go, that's it. Next we're going to use Agrax Earthshade for all of the armor and the gold. Just I'm going to use a little bit of a bigger brush since it's a wash. And use a little bit of a bigger brush, but we just want to make sure that we are able to move the wash around. You don't want to use like a tank brush or a giant, you know, terrain brush. And this goes everywhere on the armor, on the wolf tails, anywhere that hasn't been washed already. So I'm just like slapping all of it on. You can see how much is going on. It's really a lot. We want to make sure though that we don't let it pool. If you're going to do it this way, you got to keep moving the wash around or the shade around so that it doesn't get set in one particular area. Put like a big slob of like Agrax Earthshade down, and then you just move it around with the tip of your brush. Get it everywhere you need to go. Okay, I think should just about do it. Now we wait. When washing, the worst places for a wash to pool will be down here, right at the bottom where the leg armor and the feet armor are. It's really easy for the wash to get to pool over here just because of gravity, and the shade gets pulled down. And when that happens and it dries that way over there, then you know, it leaves large watermarks. Watermarks are the worst because they show that you obviously used a shade or a wash and you used too much and let it dry in the wrong place, and it's just, you really want to avoid those at all costs. So that's where we're going to end today for our Space Wolf guy here. We're going to let our Long Fang hang out, dry off, and then when we get back, what we're going to do is we're going to build the army color back up, the color of his armor, and then we're going to add some detailing as well as some paint chips. The goal is, in the end, we want him to look like our Rune Priest here. Some nice highlighted armor, some weathering and chipping, and we'll even do a little bit of transfer work. So thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you got some good, at least entertainment, or time that you were wasting with this video, had it on in the background while you were painting yourself, and we'll see you in the next video. Latest, players!